Susan and her husband Howard traveled throughout Japan in the fall, inspiring this talk, which Susan entitled Japan, a Journey in and Out of Time and Space. Japan has played a central role in her life, career, and her interest in the arts since her childhood. She lived in Japan as a toddler after World War II, as her father was in the U.S. Army. She also lived in Tokyo and taught English in a junior college after graduating from Middlebury College, where she majored in East Asian history. This was the couple's third trip to Japan, and their first during the beautiful autumn season, which she'll share with her own photography throughout this talk. While you're here, we hope you will check out the art. We have work by 18 IFA artists, 3 guest artists, and it's hung throughout the gallery. Take a look and enjoy. IFA's mission is to inspire creativity and promote art making that enriches our communities, and by providing supportive community and exhibition space for members, guest artists, and public programs related to the arts like this one. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming Susan.
Thank you, Linda. It's wonderful to see so many friends. As my friend Laura told me a few weeks ago, and others have reiterated, you only have your friends here, so nothing to worry about. But that's a high standard to meet their approval. First and foremost, I want to thank a few people. First, my husband, Howard. I wouldn't have been able to do this presentation without his tech support up until the very last minute. I started with about 9,000 pictures. So I've gotten them down to the high 200s. So I think that's pretty damn good. So we might have to truncate it depending on how unquickly I speak or whatever. If you start lagging and flagging and want to end it sooner, we can do that. But there's some particular slides of 2 gardens in Kyoto that I'll whet your appetite for, that I really want you to see. So we have to get to Kyoto. So the second thank you is to this community of friends and artists here at Imago. They have been wonderful leading up to this talk and helping me, encouraging me, and and being a member of this community is a joy. So let's get started. And we're going to start with the map of Japan, which I hope each of you has a copy. A little small, but it's a good thing to look at. And it describes, I'm doing it upside down here, our itinerary. So this was our first time back, my first time back to Hokkaido since the late 40s, as Linda pointed out. I lived in Japan in the late 40s, and I opened lots of conversational doors and friendships, I think, in Japan this past fall by sharing a photo of myself in Hokkaido, age 2. And especially the young people were astounded, not having lived at that time, and amazed that here was this Western woman, of a certain age, returning to Japan at from a time that they never knew about. So that was great. And also just to say that I hope to have time for questions at the end. Jot them down during the talk on the back of the map, okay? So really, let's get going now. Our trip started in Tokyo, and from Tokyo we went to Sendai, then to Sapporo, then to Jozankei Onsen. Onsen is the Japanese word for bath, mineral spring bath, fabulous. And then we went from there to central Honshu, to Yamagata Prefecture, to visit the hometown of the family I lived with in 1969, Akayu. And from there we went to Kyushu, and to visit the pottery towns of Kyushu, to visit Nagasaki, to pay our respects to Nagasaki, and to return to Kyoto, then to the Buddhist temple town of Koyasan, then to the Mount Fuji Lake District, and then back to Tokyo. 7 weeks. It was a lot. Okay. So the next slides are photos that I wanted to share with you from those early days when I lived in Japan. So my early history as Linda said, was because my dad was in the Army, the American Army, Occupation Army after World War II, stationed in Sendai and Sapporo. And he basically was a pediatrician, so he was taking care of the young American soldiers was his primary focus. And so the photos of that, okay, showed some villagers nearby where we were living. This next set of photos, so as I was saying to folks, this trip this past fall connected me to my 2-year-old self as well as my 22-year-old self. And when I lived in Japan in 1969, I studied the language, had connections that I can tell you more about, but it would take too long, from the Harvard Summer School, ended up living with the Inada family, a family of scientists, and also taught English, found my way to a teaching position at Jisen Tandai, Jisen Junior College. So the picture, you see the apartment building where I was able to negotiate an apartment, and my students, my English students. And then this third set of photos are of the time when Howard and I went back to Japan, and this first time I was going back to, and we reconnected with the Inada family. And you'll see father Tetsuo, mother Rumiko, the kids Marisa and Taro, age 10, whose favorite greeting every morning was "Ohayo!" Instead of "Ohayo gozaimasu," "Ohayo!" He sounded like, the Lone Ranger. And he was delightful, and now some of you have met him. He is a lot older, but still delightful. This was our first day in Japan, and of course it was important for me to immediately reconnect with the Inada family. Unfortunately, Tetsuo died in 2014, but Rumiko-san is still going strong. Taro and his family live nearby, so they are able to give her a hand, help out in the garden, and do those things. But it's been very special to maintain, or sustain this friendship all these years. Okay, trains. Trains are amazing. Come back here to the United States and you're just dismayed by transportation. And those of you who listen to NPR or Boston Public Radio, all they have are problems on trains in Boston, but we never had a problem with a train, and we took a lot of them. And this picture shows the Shinkansen, the bullet train, and I want to draw your attention to the graphic, the signs on the barrier. And they have barriers in all of the major stations. I couldn't vouch for all the smaller stations. Well, they did have some suicide issues, and this does prevent people jumping out in front of the train. But everything is marked beautifully. In the cars, when you're exiting the train, there are signs that let you know where the nearest escalator, elevator, stairway, public bathroom, handicapped accessibility. So you're informed immediately. And then this sign shows you that car 4 is going to stop right there, and it does. And the train is flush with the platform. How many of us ride that commuter rail from Boston, and you're like killing yourself to get the suitcase up the steps or down? Not in Japan, not usually. Okay. This is our local, where we stayed in Tokyo, our local train station, Sanjobashi. And it's actually a private railway stop, but connects to all the JR, the Japan Railway stops, major stations. This is our Airbnb called Pippin's Inn, and Pippin is the large cat, next picture, and baby sister Pixel, and 2 expats run this. Actually, Ushka, the wife, runs the Airbnb. She's Swedish. Her husband is a Kiwi from New Zealand. And I never really got the full story as to, but they've been in Japan for about 20 years, and it was a great place to stay. We actually stayed there at the beginning of the trip and the end of the trip. Okay, into the city. This was one of our first days in Shibuya, I think. And the tower behind Howard, I discovered in a little research, is the world's second tallest clock tower. It's part of the Japan Telegraph Company. we found that we enjoyed in the evening having refreshment of a certain type and snacks. The archive has a thing with drinks and snacks. It's a great combination. In Japan, they're called izakayas. So we spent a lot of time in the izakayas. Here you see some street fashion, which is always fun to watch, and monochromatic color seems to be very much on trend. This is the Yoyogi Park, which is right in our own neighborhood. And of course, had to find a good coffee place. And Ushka recommended Little Nap Coffee Stand. Had wonderful coffee, tiny, I think you can tell it's quite small. Most people had to wait outside. And freshly baked banana bread. That was warm each morning. It's really amazing. Okay, another connection, not only with scientists, but with artists. And Shizuko, who's pictured here, is an old friend that I met when I was there in 1969. And her mother is a painter, and we have a picture of her mother. Oh, yeah, we'll go back to the other one. Hiroko-san is age 105, still painting every day. Wow. And I was very disappointed. We saw Shizuko. The picture of her and me shows her recent 3D sculpture called Snake Dreams of Peace that was on exhibit at the Japan National Art Center in Roppongi. And so it was great to see her. But when I broached the request to visit her mother, she basically said no, very politely. Yeah, the Japanese are very private. And I was very fortunate to live in Japan at a time when I was so young, so I was brought into family life much more readily than a person, in a couple or older. So it worked well. It worked to my advantage in '69. This is Shizuko's father's father was a sculptor, Nobumichi, passed away at the age of 99 a few years back. And he did this bust of me in the summer of 1969, hot and humid. We even have pictures of me posing for the bust. And he did it as a demonstration for a magazine spread on how to make such a sculpture. So we have the magazine, but it's kind of falling apart, so it needs to be repaired, so I couldn't bring it to show you. Okay, fascinated with Japanese history. I wanted to visit the early site of Edo, the original capital name, which now is Tokyo. It was called Edo at the time. And it became the capital in the early 17th century, 1603 thereabouts, when Tokugawa shogun became the supreme leader, as you might say, in Japan. And the emperor was considered, still existed, but was basically in retirement. And not until 1868, with the Meiji Restoration, did the emperor return to power. Power of a sort, sort of like Queen Elizabeth in England, right? So this is a museum that a friend of Taro's took us to called the Edo Fukugawa Museum. And it was really delightful, showing exterior and interior examples of life in the early Edo period. We went to Matsuo Basho's museum, and for the writers here, like Vivian, some of you may know that he's probably the most famous poet of the Edo period and famous for haiku. And so one of his famous haikus you may know, I'll try to say it first in Japanese, Furu ikeya, kawazu, tobikomu, mitsu no oto. The old pond, in leaped a frog, sound of water. This is the Mitsukoshi department store, the earliest department store in Japan, and it was really one of my favorite places to go when I lived there on my own, and also when Howard joined me in '77, because in those days, pre-COVID, food was available, on several floors of the department stores to try out, and you could make a meal of it. It's really wonderful. Handsome store, and also a place where you could buy things such as this, the Emperor and Empress doll, which was displayed in many homes on what's called Okina Matsuri, or Dolls Day, Girls' Day, Dolls' Day, March 3rd, coming right up, so pull out your dolls. Then Taro treated us to a really nice izakaya in the neighborhood Chiyodaku near Mitsukoshi, where he works, and we had a wonderful meal. and we had delicious sake from Hokkaido. So that was a special event. And Asumu-san, his friend, is into infrastructure. So he took us to the new public bathrooms in Yoyogi Park, right in our neighborhood. And there was a problem. You see how beautiful they are and sort of translucent? At first, well, the idea was that they would become opaque when you walked inside, kind of like the lights going on and off would become opaque. Well, it wasn't working, so but they think now they've just made it opaque. It isn't translucent anymore. But the public bathrooms in Japan are amazing everywhere. Even a bathroom that might be at the end of a platform in a small town at the train station is clean and has a heated toilet seat, which I missed. And this is the famous Hachiko, the dog. Are all of you familiar with Hachiko?
Yeah.
A few years back, the movie was made in Woonsocket. I mean, I never knew that the Woonsocket train station, and Bristol, that the Woonsocket train station looked like Tokyo Station. But actually Shibuya Station, because that's where, and that was my main focus in 1969. I lived in a community south of Shibuya. I studied Japanese in Shibuya, taught English in Shibuya. And so this Hachiko's statue was there when I lived there, because this was back in the 30s. So the story is, just quickly, Hachiko went to the station every day to meet his master, who was a professor, who died at work, never came home. So the people of Shibuya and of Tokyo were so enamored of the loyalty of this dog. They erected this statue. And Tokyo, I keep telling people, so unlike Paris or London or Rome, where the major sites don't move. I mean, the Colosseum just stays where it is, and the Eiffel Tower stays, but Hachiko moves.
Oh.
It's a very important landmark. You know, people always say, I'll meet you at Hachiko, but moves around the front of the station. Not far, but still does move a lot, which is indicative of, in general, Tokyo's skyline. I mean, the oldest, yeah, you get it. It's just constantly changing. I thought this kimono was particularly attractive. Do you notice what's on her obi? A rabbit. Quite beautiful. And she has like little trousers sticking out that I thought were really cute. Okay, this is the famous Shibuya Scramble. And I know there are places, even in Massachusetts, where they have like the cross, the intersection, it's diagonal. But in Shibuya, many, many more people. So I tried to get a picture that would show all the crowds at Shibuya Scramble. This was a fun afternoon, having a drink in a bar, tea room, and there were two 20-something women near us who were just delightedly opening capsules. And capsules are these little toys. Japanese love them. And I'm enamored. I think I'd shown the young women my picture. So when they were ready to leave, they turned around and gave me one of the unopened capsules. So I didn't open it until Christmas morning. And actually what's inside, you can see it, it's over on the table there, is like the one in the middle, the white with the blue eyes. I have that one. And these are the Pikachu and all those characters, which I know nothing about, but very popular. Another izakaya that we discovered on our walk. The next picture shows a pathway that Howard discovered between where we were staying and Shibuya. It was a wonderful way to go to Shibuya rather than get on a train, and it was quiet, residential. You know, Tokyo is not all skyscrapers. It really is very residential. And here we are at the Shinkansen getting ready to head to Sendai on our way north. And I wanted to show you these kids on the platform. Notice all the colors. The colors represent the different train lines available in the station, guiding you to their platforms. Of course, they have the arrival and departure signs, but this is just an amazing way to indicate. And also the yellow is for folks who are blind and using a cane. And here you see a young girl traveling solo. I don't know if you've seen that show where the 3-year-olds go to the grocery store on their own. What's the name? I can't remember the name of it. But this little girl's in her school uniform, and I'm pretty sure she's traveling home to school and back.
Old enough.
On her own. Old enough. Right. Old enough. Thank you. Well, this is why we went to Sendai, is because I forgot to bring any. Oh, kokeshi, the cylindrical wooden dolls that are very typical from the Sendai region, the Tohoku region. The Tohoku region, you might recognize the name, the Great Tohoku earthquake of 2011 and tsunami really hit Sendai extremely hard. But we went there particularly to go to this shop, and the name of the shop is Shimanuki, which I think is another word for chipmunk or something like that, I'm not sure. But it's a great place, and of course picked up, even got a kokeshi this time that's black and white. So I'll have to show that to you another time, sorry. Here's a picture on the train, view from crossing over from Honshu to Hokkaido. Little snack on the train, onigiri, it's a rice ball. They're very tasty and very compact and practical for traveling on a train. This is the view from our hotel in Sapporo. A lot of mountains surround Sapporo. And I love the public bath. They say public bath for a bath that is available to all the patrons in the hotel. Actually, this particular bath did have a membership, so people in the city could join, kind of like a health club. And it was an amazing onsen, all sorts of amenities, as well as a hot bath and an even hotter bath. So one was at 37 Celsius and one was 41. And it doesn't sound that hot, but 41 was one of those baths where you really couldn't move. You just had to get in and stay. Because if you started to move, it was too hot. In Hokkaido, we did learn some things about the history and geography, not nearly enough, and we really didn't venture into the hinterland. So that's a future trip to really visit some of the natural beauty of Hokkaido. But I wanted to show you, the little dwelling, typical indigenous dwelling. Howard thinks it may have been a shop. I'm not sure if it's a home or a shop. You see this textile? Doesn't that look familiar? It looks like the Tlingit or the Northwest Athabascan Indian textiles. And so I thought that was interesting. Of course, there probably was a lot of travel back and forth. And this is a Hokkaido bear. I have lived with Hokkaido bears well as a child. We had them, here's a picture, the two in the back were in my parents' home my whole childhood. And so when my parents passed away in recent years, we inherited the big bears. And just on this trip, we bought the two little bears. And they really are wonderful. Can you tell it's a winter environment? And then this is a beautiful depiction of Hokkaido with what they call a stratovolcano. Those of you who are volcanologists probably know what a stratovolcano is. It's a cone-shaped, steep-sided volcano, like Mount Fuji. So this major mountain in Hokkaido is called Ensei or Eko Fuji, reminiscent of real Mount Fuji, that we will meet shortly. Sapporo Brewery. I think we're going to get a reputation for the drinking. But the oldest, 1876, I believe, the brewery was established, and oldest and most popular. But I'm sure Kirin and Asahi might have something else to say about that. And this was how our food was delivered. You worry about AI. Now, no wait staff. They just send a little robot. And they program, you have a location in the room, and the robot knows where to deliver the food. Okay. This was, just a typical shop selling fresh, in this case, sturgeon roe. But I wanted to use it as an opportunity to tell you about a delicious sushi that we had in Sapporo. I don't have a picture, unfortunately. Nobody spoke any English, but they were so sweet. They saw us come in, and they were kind of in a panic. And they had a young person there who knew a little English. And then they named each sushi. One was called Snow, and another was Moon. And I just loved that. It was so poetic. And the flavor and the taste was equally poetic. This is a day trip we took out of Sapporo to Otaru. It's a canal-side town up on the Japan Sea, facing Russia. Somebody actually could see Russia from their front door. Why I remember that, I don't know. It was a charming place. You saw the kind of the Art Deco, the wrought iron, and we did go on that excursion boat, you know, taking the canal ride, and then stopping for a drink at the warehouse, which are now cafes and restaurants. Back to Sapporo. There's a connection, not Rhode Island connection, but a Massachusetts connection. This is the oldest, 1879 thereabouts, oldest building in Sapporo, not that old. Hokkaido is a much newer place, and also fires and earthquakes, things don't last. And so the clock was made in Boston by the E. Howard Company. I remember his name. And which is now the Waltham Watch Company. And so, you know, so that clock's apparently, you know, been working ever since. This is a public park in Sapporo. It was rainy when we were there. And this is an Isamu Noguchi. Some of you may be familiar with him, the sculptor. And it's actually a slide. We did watch one fellow go inside and then come down and almost was thrown out, you know, thrown off because it was so wet and slippery. We went to the Institute of Contemporary Art in Sapporo. It was an excellent museum, no photos. Howard persuaded the docent to let him take a picture of the railing around the stairwell, right? Because it was not the art, at least not to them, it wasn't the art, it was to him. But these two young women obliged to allow me to take their picture, which I thought was fun. So then we left Sapporo and went to a wonderful weekend basking in the Hokkaido's autumn delights as well as the baths, a place called Jozankei Onsen. And this is our room, and there's our bath. We actually had our own bath. It could have been outside if you opened the windows, but it was a little chilly. And we actually did do a more public bath, but it was considered private. We had to arrange to go to it. But it was drizzling, so we're out there on the roof in the bath. Felt really good. The rain's kind of coming down. Water on all sides, literally. A view from our hotel. Just wanted to show you some of the clothing that, in a typical Japanese ryokan, traditional ryokan, they give you a yukata to wear and then a jacket to stay warm. And they kind of expect that you're going to wear it throughout the time that you're inside. Although we were in another town and there were people outside, you know, in summer weather it's common for the yukatas to be worn outside. This is the bedding. You can see if the room could hold many more than 2 people. So these are actually the quilts that go on top of the futon, and they have there's special words for I guess this is kake futon, which means the covering of the futon, and they're really wonderfully cozy and comfortable. This was a little hospitality that would be in the room when you returned, especially when you first arrived. I think even after the first arrival, some tea, a sweet. Here, this is a public spaces in the hotel, and I love the lanterns. This was where we had a formal dining area, and so we actually sat with other people that we didn't know but enjoyed being near them. And then there's the beautifully presented food. This is called kaiseki, which is like haute cuisine, very high-end food and delicious. And some of the artwork in the hotel. Carving. And then we enjoyed an illuminated autumn walk in the forest over the river gorge, the Toyahira River. So here you see some of the trees, and then this was actually on the ground at your feet with these flowers. These really beautiful. The next day we returned to the same place in the daylight and then walked on the bridge that crosses the gorge. And this is a picture of the gorge. And folks who couldn't indulge in a full bath could actually do some foot washing, this was the only place I saw foot washing. It's interesting. And here you see the staff saying goodbye, which is very typical Japanese. The staff comes out. We were all on a bus, so they were able to say goodbye to 20 or so people all at once. Then the train back to Honshu, leaving Hokkaido. This woman was teaching or showing this young man how to make certain kinds of origami, which I just thought was so charming. I think he knew how to do some, but he's clearly learning some more techniques. This is sake, a typical shop in Honshu. And we're coming to this area to pay our respects in Akayu. Home is like the home seat of the Inada family, where Aunt Masako, who died in 2010, is buried. And I remember going up these steps in 1969 for the Obon, the ancestor celebration every August. I remember going up into the cemetery then. And here's the chief priest at the Buddhist temple. Buddhism really is the place that remembers the dead. Shinto is more about the life ceremonies, but they cross over a lot, so it's really hard to make hard and fast definitions. And here is Masako Obasan's stone at the center. Her formal last name is Kawamura, and you can see the 3 lines at the top of the stone. That's for river. Kawa is river, so that kanji is an easy one to remember. And this is a typical wood carving from that area, where basically the wood is kind of peeled with a knife, and they make beautiful, beautiful creatures. Sunset over the mountains of Akayu, heading the following day to the Japan Alps. So we went to Nagano, and here we have other friends that I launched a conversation with in 2013 on an excursion boat out to Stromboli in the Aeolian Islands off Sicily. And I saw the couple, and I just, was curious. Are they Chinese? Are they Japanese? So I sat down near them, and they started speaking Japanese. So, of course, I started to speak to them and said something in Japanese, and they were astounded. And we kept running into them on the island several times. And then the last time I saw them on a bus, I clambered onto the bus. I asked them for their meishi, their card, and they didn't have one, but I got her email, and we've been in touch ever since. We, in fact, visited them. They live in Akita, up in the northwest part of Japan, and we saw them in 2015, as well as this trip. So they stayed at the same inn that we stayed in over the weekend, and they took us right away to the snow monkey park, because I had mentioned something about wanting to see the snow monkeys.
Yeah.
So we had to clamber up this 1.7 kilometers, not that far, but a little bit, to see the monkeys, and they're tame. They run around by your feet. You're not allowed to feed them, thankfully, but about a troop of about 200 come to this area. It's a small pool. These pictures don't quite show the size, but I imagine now they're enjoying the snow. Although I just read today in the Japan Times that snow is it's not as cold as it should be this time of year. So I guess global warming, right? And so that hillside shows where the monkeys go at night. They go up higher. There were a couple of young fellows who were docents at the park. They're telling us about the lives of the snow monkeys. And the next day, there was a young woman at this inn where we're staying. There's a picture of a staff person and the name of the inn in the background, who said they waited until about 3 or 4 in the afternoon for the monkeys to come. And we had gotten there several hours before that, the day before, so we were lucky. Full moon over this Kinosaki Onsen town, and here we are enjoying refreshments at the end of the day. And what was so cute, Yuko-san, she created little plans for each day that we were together in English, or in Romaji, in Japanese, and in the kanji. So I have them, and I just thought that was so wonderful. And here you're seeing more of the wonderful food that we had at this inn. It's called Matsuya. And, okay, first on her agenda for the next morning, or the first was the Snow Monkey Park, but the next day she took us to a wasabi farm. Howard and I never really thought about where wasabi came from. It's a powder, right, that you mix up and cook the sushi. No, it's actually a plant. So, and it needs, the previous picture, you could see the water wheel. It needs very, clear, clean water. So they're in the Japan Alps. The water comes directly down the mountainside. So it's very fresh and clean. This was another place on her agenda, the Matsumoto Castle, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the 5 most famous castles in Japan. Matsumoto, the seat of the Matsumoto domain or clan. And you can see go back real quick, you can see the wood timbers climbing up. We climbed up 6 flights. The rise of the stairs were so deep going up was one thing, where you could kind of pull yourself up to the next rise. Going down was really tough. Plus, the wood is so slippery. You have to really be careful. Okay, this is a fun event that I saw in various places, or we saw in various places in Japan. The age ceremony. 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and 7-year-olds. Yeah, and home wreckers too, as Carolyn would say. Are brought up to the shrine or temple. I think both. And parents are grateful for the life and health of their children, so they bring them, and also they pray for their happy future and continued health. And they get dressed in these beautiful little kimonos. The boys, I think there'll be a picture in a minute. Yeah, you can see the boy. They look like miniature emperors and empresses. And very popular now for men, the wider leg, hanten, it's called. It's very cute. I don't know if I've mentioned, but rental kimonos are very popular now in Japan. And here's there's a couple. I think some people were wearing their own kimonos. I do. Although for children, I'm sure they rent it because 3-year-old is not going to fit, the 5-year-old won't fit into the kimono in 2 years. So this little girl's taking a load off, having ice cream to congratulate her for making the trek up to the temple. And here we're talking a little bit earlier about what a wedding kimono looks like. So you could see them, the couple under the maple tree. It's quite lovely. Oh, and another couple. Just to show you, we were there. And then these are called ame. These are placards that have prayers. You write prayers and wishes. We've done some similar things here at Imago during the pandemic, people to write their wishes for the healthy future. And here we're enjoying a snack. These were like dumplings. They had savory and sweet, more variety. And then the third item on Yuko's itinerary was to go to this Zen temple, Gansho-in, I-N ending means the temple, and you were not supposed to take a picture. I did, as you can see, but I did the selfie thing. You hold the camera down, and so I took the picture up. So this is a very, seems to me, a very unusual, although I kind of began to realize that Hokusai did paintings like this in other places. But this is in the ceiling of this Zen temple. Very colorful. The Phoenix is called, sorry. And here you see the frogs. There's a frog in the foreground and one further back, stopping you from going forward on the deck, on the porch. This was gorgeous. This is I've said maybe a palanquin, we're not sure. Howard said ceremonial carriage, conveyance of some sort. And Hokusai painted the wood at the top of this beautiful. That's also, that was at the Hokusai Museum. After we went to the temple, we went to the museum. Okay, we're now back to the hotel, and I just love the shoes. I don't find them comfortable to wear, but they're really cool to look at. There's a small pair on the table back there. And I thought this was the prettiest yukata that we saw when we were traveling. It's actually more lavender than it shows up. Beautiful view of the mountains. Our intention was to try to get up into the Alps, but by the time we were going to go, it was overcast, starting to rain, so we didn't quite make it up to where the Olympics had been. And here they go up on the platform to say goodbye. They meet you on the platform. They go to the platform. They're so hospitable. And this was back on our way, or not really back, but heading south to Kyushu, to the pottery towns, where we stopped in Hakata, and they have food trucks. And this is a very popular one. We sat with some folks from Indonesia, a fellow who works for the Japan Foundation in Tokyo. And because I'm not a big ramen fan, but he turned me on to yaki ramen, so like stir-fried ramen. It was delicious, delicious. And you see the eggs in Japan are that deep orange, fresh. Okay, here we are on our way to the pottery towns. We stayed, there are two main towns, Imari and Arita, and those of you who know about porcelain and ceramics, very famous names in that world. This is a bridge in Imari, in fact, down the street from where we were staying, a shop with pottery, tiles on the street, horseshoe crabs. Who knew they had horseshoe crabs? What they do. And then this view from our hotel room. And Howard, the photographer, taking pictures.
more ceramics. And then we spent one day at this mountain town called Okawachiyama. It's known as the town of the secret kilns, because it was under the control of a certain daimyo, a certain military leader, and they found kaolin, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Kaolin, which is an element you need to make fine porcelain. And the military leader brought potters from Korea, because Korea and China had been making porcelain for centuries prior to Japan. So they were brought, and here are just some examples of the scenery, a little tea house, the beautiful pottery. You can see the kiln smokestacks, chimneys is the word, in the background. And they have the stepped kilns. And the pottery that was made, I mean, they actually had a guard at the entrance to this town, keeping people out, especially people who might be wanting to make similar, I don't know all the details. I think it could make a setting for a great mystery novel or something. And here we are finding another coffee place, because we found one that we really liked, but of course they were closed Wednesday, and Wednesday was our last day in Imari. And this lovely lady made coffee in this contraption with, I don't know if you can see to the right, copper and glass, some kind of pour over or something or other. It was quite lovely. This is the Ceramics Museum. Didn't want to bore you with lots of pictures of just individual pieces of pottery and ceramics, but there were some beautiful ones. And we had a nice little lunch in a sweet place. And this woman with her children was sitting nearby having lunch. And so then we saw her on the street a little later, and so she waved at us. And this is a Shinto shrine with a ceramic torii gate, which is pretty amazing, and a steep climb up. It's getting, I don't know if it's the sun, but the colors are getting a little washed out. But up the top, this piece you can see still has some brilliant blue, and then brilliant blue pottery. We did buy pieces particularly in Arita, the second town. And we also bought pieces in other spots. But we had to buy backpacks to carry them home. Okay, now we're moving to further down, a little further southeast, maybe in Kyushu, Nagasaki. Beautiful, stunningly beautiful. It looks like San Francisco Bay, maybe Newport, Rhode Island. Notice the bridge.
Yeah.
We don't have the palm trees. The origami, that motif we think of as Hiroshima because of the little girl. Remind me of her name. Sadako, who tried to fold 1,000 cranes before to keep herself healthy, and I think she folded 800.
Almost.
She didn't quite get to 1,000, and she did die. But the horror of Nagasaki, I think, is that this happened 2 days after Hiroshima. Bigger bomb, killed more people, maybe a quarter of the population of Nagasaki. It's really horrific. But they actually call their museum, in Hiroshima I think they call it the Peace Museum. They call this part the Peace Memorial as well, but they also say it's the Atomic Bomb Museum. Just tell it like it is. This is a reflecting pool, and then those glass columns enclose the names of everyone who's died as a result of the bombing. And beautiful peace statue. Kind of reminded me of the Sadako statue in Hiroshima. You might know that Nagasaki was one of the few ports open to trade with the West, well before the black ships from Rhode Island fame made it into Shimoda Harbor near Tokyo. So there is a section up the hill in Nagasaki that has, it looks kind of like San Francisco, Victorian, very beautiful, very pretty architecture. We happened to hit a Tall Ships Festival and Hanabi, which used to be the name of our boat, fireworks, Japanese word for fireworks. Hana, flower, bee, fire, flower, fire. It's a wonderful word. So we're leaving Kyushu, and now we're heading to Kyoto, which many of you probably know about or maybe have been there. This is a temple that we had never been to before on our previous trips, Tofukuji. and it has a beautiful Zen garden, or garden attached to it. And okay, we've gone from there over to Daitokuji, which is a Zen temple complex. If you can just go back. Yeah, yeah. The gardens in Japan all have certain elements that make them so beautiful. They don't necessarily have to have all of them in the same garden, but they will mostly have plants, but often water, other ornaments like stone lanterns, as well as rocks. And some of you are probably very familiar with Ryoanji, which is a famous rock garden. We did not go to Ryoanji this time, but we went to these gardens in, and I think actually one of them is part of Tofukuji, in this Zen temple complex. And these rocks are, it's as if they're in an ocean of sand, or the sand representing the water. They represent islands, mountains, and they really are stunningly beautiful. And this particular style of calligraphy is often found in a Zen temple. And the walkways are beautiful. And look at this pathway. You see we haven't gotten to that picture, because I'm seeing something to the right. Yeah, you see the top step has a wrapped rock. So there's a line wrapped around it, which means do not go in, do not enter. So it's a very elegant way of saying stay out. And here's a viewing platform. The folks I noticed in the picture, they're all looking up at something. I'm not sure what it was. Okay, now to the commerce of Kyoto, the crafts. And this is a beautiful fan shop. Bizen-in, it's called. So beautiful. And I love the motif of the red maples. This is lacquerware that we saw at the Kyoto Design Center. A lovely place to visit. Little canal in the Gion district. And here you see either a maiko, which is a geisha in training, or it could be a full-fledged geisha. And you notice the shoes. Nobody else wears geita that high. And if you stay abreast of fashion, you know that a lot of shoe designers take their cues from the Japanese sandals. And I love the obi. If you saw the obi, her obi was, see the yellow obi? So long. It's very, only a geisha would wear an obi like that. Obi, the typical obi is tucked up underneath, so it's almost like a pillow at the back. This is a market, fish market, Nishiki, and there's a lot of food on display. Okay, the next series of pictures are really of two very special places that are considered the masterpieces of garden and landscape. When I lived in Japan in 1969, I went to both of them. I went to Katsura Detached Palace and to Shugakuin Detached Palace. And Howard had never been to Shugakuin, but we together had been to Katsura. So this is, and what I wanted to make sure you, not make sure, but to help you understand is that it's unlike a Western approach to either landscape or even architecture, where we are all about the structure. In the East, it's about time and place and the dynamism of the two. So Kenzo Tange, who's a well-known architect, described Katsura as the first stroll garden in Japan, incorporating tradition and the dynamism of creation, because every time you make a turn in the garden, you're seeing something different. You're seeing something new. So that very first picture, go back, you see there's a pine at the end of the path that blocks your view. So you're not able to see anything else in the garden. You only look at that particular tree, and then you move to another place, and it begins to open up. And there's an example of some of the ornamentation, the rocks. They're like little islands, They call these cloud pines, that kind of way of pruning levels. And the interior, is this not gorgeous? Love the black and white interior and stepping stones from place to place. When I went to Katsura for the very first time, the second time with Howard, we were there in August, and each of the little pavilions scattered around the grounds is intended for one season. And when we arrived, this was August, there was not a breath of air. It was really hot. We climbed a little rise, got up to the little tea house, and you felt a breeze. And there was no wind anywhere, but it was the way the building was situated. It was designed to capture that one zephyr that would be there in August. Those are 6-season windows. And I like to say that mid-century modern has its roots in Japanese architecture. And look at that. It's a picture, it's a frame, it's a picture frame. That view was intended for you to see. It was the autumn leaves. And then, of course, back that evening, we went to another izakaya. And we not only enjoyed beer, but we became very fond of lemon sours. And that guy was so cute. When we walk in, they were all chanting and calling out. You know, everybody in all the help, all the chefs and the wait staff, you know, kind of welcome, but in Japanese, and they sounded like they could have been a rap group. Now to Shu. So we were at Katsura, beautiful sunny day. The very next day we go to Shugakuin, out in really a more rural, what the Japanese kind of call a more, not rough, but well, rough is sort of close to it, naturalistic environment. And it was rainy. So we got, you know, earphones because the guy didn't speak English. It was a big group. The day before we'd had maybe 5 other people with us. Today we were like 25, at Shugakuin, 25, 30 people. So I had, you know, the earphones, you know, the audio, you know, my camera, the umbrella. So finally, Howard gives me his audio earphones. I put them in one pocket. I put mine in the other pocket. So I don't know if they ever worked again because they must have gotten quite wet. But anyway, it's still very beautiful in the rain. This is very interesting. This shelf is a designated national treasure. Who designates a shelf as a national treasure? Apparently something about, you know, the perspective it offers, that they are, the width of the wood is a little different at the back than the front, and it is beautiful. And I'm really sorry now that I've got a picture with the piling right in the middle, the column in the middle, but oh well. And a view, here you can see that mountains are used in Japanese gardens. The scenery nearby is included as an element of the garden. So, and we look a little wet, just to prove to you. And the emperor, the ex-emperor at this point, mid-17th century, Gozu Mino, decided that this was the perfect place for his retirement villa, this mountainside villa. And the bridge has a Chinese gilded phoenix atop that's quite beautiful. And see the ventilation possible, and they move the sliding screens aside and then open them up. And then a beautiful view of the little pavilion. Okay, next day, sun. Yay, sun's back. This is, some of you may know, the Silver Pavilion. We did not go to the Golden Pavilion this time. And I was just reading about the fact that the founding shogun who created this as his retirement villa, although at that time the emperor was still in power, so the shogun was a military leader, but he was not, they had not changed hands from the emperor to the military. He was apparently really responsible for a lot of the culture and arts of that period, and created this retirement villa. His grandfather had designed and created the Golden Pavilion. The grandson created the Silver Pavilion. And apparently at one time it was covered in lacquer, so that when it was wet or the sun shone on it in a certain way, it did look silver. And there has been discussion about recreating the lacquer surface, but they've decided against it. You can see that this rock garden, or Kare Sansui, as it's called, looks like Mount Fuji. That's the intention. And the sand around it is considered a sand, like a sea, a silver sea. And I didn't get the best picture. There really are some pictures that show almost waves in the sand. My picture doesn't show that, but still beautiful nonetheless. And a view, you can see the city in the distance. So after leaving the Silver Pavilion, we went for a walk, and you'll see in a minute the Philosopher's Path. But the young women were enjoying wearing, I think they were wearing rental kimonos, and they were taking pictures of each other, and it's very colorful. And then they found one little, maple tree that they could stand in front of. And we found actually a potter along the route here, so that was fun. Rental, these are actually second-hand kimonos. Actually, the jacket I'm wearing is from a second-hand kimono shop. It was not expensive. I found it, usually it takes me a while to find something that I was going to buy, but I just love the color. I just figured it was perfect. And some are full length. This happens to be cut in half. I love the autumn grasses, and then Howard found there are a number of feral cats that live along this pathway. So the Philosopher's Path takes you to a huge timbered gate of Nanzenji, a very well-known temple in Kyoto, and there were numbers of people there taking advantage of the beautiful autumn trees. And I love that woman's kimono, just so many colors, it was perfect. Then we walked around one evening, and Nanzenji illuminated at night, a whole different look. November chrysanthemums. The machi architecture, the kind of matchstick architecture, very typical of Kyoto. And this is the Asaka Shrine. And this is the pagoda. This is Higashiyama, a district of Kyoto. And hillside up there. I don't know if some of you know the anime My Neighbor Totoro. So this is Totoro. I haven't seen the movie, but I want to sometime. Pagoda, the Kiyomizu-dera is the name of this temple, and that's the pagoda that goes it's a 5-tiered pagoda. Quite stunning. And this porch is so beautiful. It was packed with people because it was a beautiful autumn day, and you get great views of the city of Kyoto as well from there. And Howard enjoyed his little lunch after we went to the porch, and then some young ladies, I think Maiko, geisha in training. And then this is the Heian Shrine in Kyoto. It's a very large shrine and has a lovely garden. Look at this beautiful bridge. Very similar in some ways to that bridge at Shugakuen, the detached palace. And a beautiful pagoda. Well, it's a shrine, it's not really a pagoda. And this is a little garden across the street from the inn where we were staying in Kyoto. From Kyoto, we moved to Koyasan. And Koyasan is a Buddhist center, and we were able to actually stay. It's a popular pilgrimage destination, has been for centuries. Hundreds of Buddhist temples are at Koyasan. And we stayed in what's called a Shukobo temple experience, where you spend the night. It's like staying in a college dorm. Those of you who've been back to college for reunions. So much fun. This was particularly fun because there was no heat. And this was getting to be later in November and quite cold. Our room was actually the closest to the bathrooms, but it was bitter cold getting up in the middle of the night. At least they had the heated toilet seats. Yay! And this beautiful Okunoin Cemetery is the most holy section of Koyasan. It's with the mausoleum of Kobo Daishi, who founded Koyasan. Yeah, you can see small trees, right? These are cedars. Just really a beautiful, beautiful place. Now we're heading, keep moving here, took 7, 8, 9 trains between Koyasan. Koyasan, to get there, you had to take a number of trains. We took maybe 7, I think, between Kyoto and Koyasan, plus a cable car, funicular, and then a bus. Yeah, and then walking, all fun. So this is our first view, the conductor on our train. So we're heading now from Koyasan to Mount Fuji, to the lake, the Five Lakes district it's called. And the conductor was really cute. He comes into the car and he says, "The mountain." Okay, so we looked out the window, and there was the full moon and Fuji. It was quite dramatic. And this was the room. This was another one of these beautiful inns we stayed in. The town is called, the lake is Kawaguchi-ko Lake. Sounds like some kids made up the name, but that's the name. Beautiful food again. Ikebana, flower arranging. We had our own bath. It looks like there's a lid on top. It's actually the reflection. And right here, I just have to indulge me for a moment. We went to this town, not just to see Mount Fuji, that was a benefit, but to go to a kimono museum, because 20 or more years ago, I was at a conference in DC, went to the Smithsonian, and there was an exhibit of Japanese kimonos that were breathtaking, that are called Sukigahana. And it's a particular type of dyeing and weaving that had died out from the 15th, 16th century, had not been used. And I have some pictures of the kimonos on the table, and we also have a slide. So we went to Ichiru Kubota's museum, and the closest place to the museum was this resort, this mountain lakeside resort, which was really nice. So here are the, not only, well, we have to go back to that bridge, but anyway, these great pictures. So we'll show the pictures of Fuji. That was the view, that's the view from the hotel. Not from our room was on the other side, but if you went up to the 7th floor, you got this great view. And then when we went to the museum, we got these beautiful views with the autumn leaves. And these young women were just, having so much fun. They call it momijigari, meaning maple leaf hunting. Instead of leaf peeping, they call it leaf hunting. And I'm looking at the exterior of the Kubota Museum, and I'm thinking, well, that looks like Gaudi, because a couple of us are planning a trip to Barcelona. And then I was reading a little bit in the book I had, and it said Gaudi, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess so. That he was fascinated with Gaudi and did a lot of traveling. So the museum has artifacts that he's picked up. And so here are pictures of some of the kimonos. You can see them up close later. And what was so go back to the one with the bridge, the picture of the lake. Yeah, I just want to read this. We could not get on the bus to go back to the hotel after we'd been at the museum. The buses were overcrowded, so we walked. However, it was quite chilly once you got onto that bridge, and the wind was blowing. I had a cotton hat, and I was holding the hat on my head. I wanted to get into any car nearby because it was so cold, but the cars were not moving. We were moving much faster, even though we were fighting the wind. So this is just a little thing I wrote. Fuji-san takes your breath away. I cannot breathe. I try to make my way across the bridge against the wind, against the cold, against the enormity of that icon. Do you see Fuji? I can't look. I know the mountain is watching me, but I can't look. Fuji-san takes your breath away. That's my little inspiration. That's fun, that's fun. Okay, yeah. This was, I thought was so funny. Look at this. Not a soul is looking at the mountain. Right? We spent all this time staring at the mountain, taking pictures of the mountain, overcome by the mountain. Not these kids. Probably see it every day. Okay, and after going to the lake, the Sybaritic weekend, we're back in Tokyo and going on our pathway between Shibuya and the house. And there's Howard, and there I am, back to the coffee, little nap coffee. And, Howard, can you zoom in? Can you see the kids?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, different Yochen or different preschools have different color hats. So this is a pink school. Aren't they cute?
Yeah.
Some of you may know this, what this refers to. Howard has a well-known photograph. Arvia owns one, and a couple other people we know own one, called Under the Copper Roof. So this is the copper roof. And this is in Omotesando, a very high-end fashion district of Tokyo. Now, this is Takeshita Street, which back in 2015 was the site of all the little Bo Peeps, the Japanese girls dressed up like kawaii. Kawaii, thank you. Dressed up like fairy tale characters. So this is Takeshita Street, and it's actually, there's a camera, and we're up there. I don't know if you can see. This is me and Howard. I don't know how far it was, being projected or being filmed. a nice little neighborhood of Tokyo. We really went exploring into neighborhoods that are not the most popular. This is Yanaka, another Edo period architecture. But I like that Buddha as well. And this is from a little art materials shop. They're very sweet people. And we spent Thanksgiving Day at Meiji Shrine, and it turned out to be kind of a celebration of agriculture and harvest. So very similar to Thanksgiving at the Meiji Shrine. Sake barrels and the decorated boat with all the fruits and vegetables. And this Japanese way of growing and displaying chrysanthemums, which are the imperial flower. And I love that. And we went to the Yayoi Kusama Museum, those of you who know Yayoi Kusama. I think we couldn't take pictures, we couldn't take pictures, but that was in the lobby. And then we had a snack at the Soseki. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Japanese literature. He's very well known, and he wrote a book called I Am Not a Cat. He also wrote one about the three-cornered world, and he has a quote that says, the artist lives in the little triangle taken out of our usual four-cornered world. Something like that. That's kind of interesting. And souvenirs, we went to Asakusa, very touristy, one of the last days we were in Tokyo. But if you needed last-minute souvenirs, it was a good place to get them. And yeah, that's the new version of the kawaii. And there's Taro at the end of our trip, taking us to the hotel near Narita, near the airport. Sad. And there's a little boy with Pikachu nearby. And a little boy with Pikachu, which we did not buy. And Happy New Year, the Year of the Dragon. Thank you. Okay, your turn.
Susan, the castle that was on that rock in the middle of the pond. How old was that?
I had that down, I think 1500s, like 1570 or thereabouts.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Jay.
I'm so glad you mentioned the shelf being a national treasure. I've never been to Japan, but I've worked with people in paper conservation. Anyway, they went to a city, which I cannot remember, a town in Japan, where the paper maker, the man himself, was a national treasure.
Right.
So I wondered.
Thank you. Well, I meant to mention that national treasures can be, right,
Yeah.
a piece of art, piece of architecture, and also people,
Yeah.
national treasures.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you for bringing that up. Other questions? Annette, what do you think? These folks are thinking of going to Japan. What do you think?
Oh, well, I think it sounds like it's incredible. I'd love to go.
Hope so.
Yeah.
Eileen?
What was the cost of living like there as compared to here?
I'd say pretty cost of living. I mean, what do you think? It depends. I mean, pretty similar, I would say.
Yeah, that's not an easy thing to answer because essentially Japan is very expensive. But some things are like going out to a restaurant is in some ways relatively cheaper than it would be here, but then there are other things that are very, very expensive. The transportation isn't bad. Transportation is pretty inexpensive, but it varies a lot. You know, like I said, it's not there's kind of complexities to answering that, because in part, one of the things that we experienced was the exchange rate, and
Very
this
favorable.
time we were there, it was incredibly favorable. In 2015, when we were there, it was about 110 to the dollar. This
Yeah.
time it was 150 to the dollar.
Wow.
And so you really kind of notice that
And when I lived
terms
there
of
in
things that you do.
1969, it was 360 to the dollar. Really different. But they just had a economic shift so that the exchange rate is moving back towards their favor, which makes it hard for Japanese to travel if the exchange rate is not too good. Yeah. Thank you, Eileen. Yeah, oh, fair.
The train system over there looks amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't show all the, I took tons of pictures. I wanted to show more of the interior and everything.
How expensive is it to run on those trains?
That's a good question. The Japan Rail Pass just went up. In fact, we bought ours just before, and you have to buy the Japan Rail, which only goes on the Japan Rail, like the bullet trains and certain limited express, major train around the country. That just went up, but it was pretty, I was going to say you have to be a foreigner to purchase it. Folks in Japan can't buy the
Yeah,
pass.
it varies a little bit because they do it by distance. So even, let's say, within in a city and even the buses and things like that, you go from zone to zone and it changes a little bit. The buses weren't super expensive. They were about 70 or 80 cents. Unless you started going through a lot of different zones. The trains varied tremendously. The bullet trains are, a little bit more expensive, but because we had passes, we never thought about the cost because we weren't buying tickets.
And then there are lots of the subways and private railway, like the train station I showed you that was in our neighborhood was the Oda-Q line. So folks have a pre-charged, credit card, a plastic card that just, put on the turnstile. So you load that up and you can use it for lots of things, not just train travel.
Yeah,
So-
within Tokyo it was pretty much less than $1 most of the time but each time you transferred from one to the other, you were paying again. It wasn't like, so if you were going long distances, it could start adding up too.
I mean, the trains are immaculate, not just on the inside, but the outside. They wash them, I think I was reading while we were there, like every 15 days, they, hose them down.
Wow.
So every time a train came in the station, it looked like, oh, look at all these new trains. No, they're just clean. That's what a train should look like, apparently. Yeah. Comfortable, great. What else? Allison, do you have?
Do they sell food on the trains? Like if you're taking them off
Yes,
the
they
train?
do, or in the station before you get on. Sell food on the train, but not, it depends on the train, not longer distance, yes, but, yeah. We didn't really eat.
It
I
used
got
to be a
drinks
little
on the
more
train,
common
yes.
that they would have vendors, especially on the bullet trains. But now all of the stations have food shops and machines selling food and things like that. So there's not quite so many that have vendors. And the vendors that do exist on the train maybe have coffee or tea. But they used to actually have warm meals, but now they don't do that
A
anymore.
little cart,
Yeah.
a little goodie.
Right, yeah. They used to, yeah. What I wanted to say is that there are no trash baskets, no trash barrels on the streets in Japan. And everybody, there are signs in a lot of places that say, take your trash home. And in 2015, I was in the bathroom and I'm trying to wash my hands and I'm looking around for a paper towel, no such animal. And I'm looking at, what are these other people doing besides, doing this? The women all pulled out a little terry cloth washcloth from their bag, dried their hand, folded it up, put it back in their bag. I brought the one I was using with me. Of course, I used it there, but do I use it here? No. And I should use it here. It's a great thing.
The Japan Rail Pass, since we've been looking into it, it's a little under $400 for 1 week.
Okay.
And I think 570 or something for 2 weeks. And I've been seeing a lot of debate as to whether it's worth it or not.
Yeah, it depends on which rail lines or where you're headed. 400 for a week, 570 for 2 weeks.
On the pass, I don't
I think
even
it's,
remember
but
now.
they just look
Yeah.
into it.
I've been looking into it. So.
Yeah, it's not cheap, but it's, if you had to buy, yeah, very convenient, yeah. And that's
Sorry, so do they still have little cubicles where you can sleep, or are there
Like
things
the
like that on
capsule
the train?
hotels,
Yeah.
oh, on the trains, I don't know if they have sleeping cars on the trains.
But
Not
do
that
they
I'm
still
aware
have
of.
the hotels where it's just a little
I
cubicle?
think some of those exist, but I've never, seen one
Yeah,
myself.
they
I think
still
in
exist.
Tokyo.
Uh, but they're not, you don't quite see them to the extent that we've been led to believe they're very in specific places. Our friend Taro, because with his job, he sometimes is traveling, and he says, oh, he loves them because if he needs to sleep for an hour or two, he
Yeah,
just
I think like
goes
at the
into one.
airport,
Yeah.
places like that, they're available, yeah.
But one of the things, I mean, around the train stations are hotels galore, and the Japan Rail System actually owns a lot of hotels that are right at the train stations, and they're mostly kind of business hotels.
The one we stayed in Sapporo was wonderful, and that was one of my
Yeah,
favorite
that was the more
baths.
deluxe
It was
one.
a deluxe, it's called it was a JR Station Tower Hotel.
Yeah.
So it was, it was a skyscraper for Sapporo. Yeah, Rena.
Susan, did you find that the Japanese were equally curious about the tourists, or because they get so many tourists, were you approached?
Not as much as in the past when people wanted to practice English. Back when I lived there in the late 60s, yeah, that was a big thing. And maybe even, yeah, not so much. Well, Japan just reopened. This was the first fall, this past, so 2023 was the first time that they came out of lockdown. But as our friends Yuko and Katsuhiro said, they had kind of a mild lockdown, sort of the way Australia and New Zealand did. They kept people out, but within the country, it was not as severe as we had here in a lot of ways. So the curiosity, yeah, I think when I would share that photo and talk to people, yes, the questions and the pleasure. I mean, there definitely was an immediate response of, thank you so much for visiting my country. They're, very, that hospitable as well as appreciation. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say the three things I love about Japan. One, it's beautiful. Two, that it's fun, the baths and all of that. And three, there is such respect. It is a society of we and us, not I and me. And the contrast with the United States is pretty stark. It's very respectful. I mean, to the point that the conductor comes into the car, bows to all the people, goes through the car, turns around, and when he leaves the car, bows again, leaves. You can sort of think of it as pro forma, but there is a sense that, I'm here because you're paying for me to be here, to work for you. We encountered a kind of a nice little vignette. Do you want to explain it? The conductor with the metal piece under his arm.
Oh, I mean, this is specific.
Well, it's really interesting, I think. We saw this guy, the conductor, carrying what looked like a piece of metal under his arm, and we had seen this woman pushing a wheelchair, and she was adjacent to us, waiting for the train. The train arrives. He opens up this piece of metal. It's a ramp. He puts the ramp down, and the wheelchair went onto the train. Well, we're still on the train, maybe 20 minutes later, and she starts to get up, takes the wheelchair, goes to the door, and we see a guy outside. Same thing.
Wow.
He was meeting them. Now, I don't know if I would love to have talked to her and asked her, did you arrange for this? Was this done in advance? But it just shows that, oh my God, it was just the care, the respect. Yeah, it's really, really cool. Any other questions?
I was just gonna say, the gardens that you showed us were
Yeah.
so
Yeah, the gardens are beautiful, beautiful. I know there's some master gardeners in this audience who know a lot about gardening, and they really do have. And the symbolism, I mean, I have a beautiful book of Katsura. Each of those gardens deserves a whole talk, not 5 pictures. So I apologize because he kept telling me to pare down. So I took out. I mean, there were more pictures of the two of us, but I figured you didn't want to see them. And there were more pictures, but I did a pretty good job of showing you most everything.
considering you had over 9,000.
I know, 9,000. I know, when I looked at that total, the album was like, oh, my God. Well, it was 7 weeks, hello. If you're taking pictures constantly, adds up to real numbers. Yeah, so it's a wonderful place. I highly recommend it. The food is delicious. The people are so sweet and special. I mean, I'm very touched that I'm still in touch with, I'm connected with 2 families from the time when I lived there in 1969. My parents didn't seem to make a connection when they lived, but I think it was really difficult. Japan was recovering from the war. And so the late 40s were a very difficult time. So I don't think plus they were representing, the victors. So, yeah. But the other thing that amazes me is the lack of resentment about the atomic bombs. I think if you talk to a survivor, someone who was touched directly, I think there would be much more. It would be much more difficult for them. But overall, as the country, it's, they are. It was actually, I was reading about why the emperor, why people were able to sort of move on, because they sort of allowed the emperor to sort of assume total responsibility for what happened, and so that the nation could go past the defeat. Yeah, it's interesting. Not that I'm suggesting that we have an emperor. There may be one on the ballot in November, just saying. So look around at the art, buy some art, snack.